Welcome to the Clifton Whirly Show. This week on the Whirly Birds, we have Nick and Josh with us, as well as Mike Copeland of Loophole Pedals. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here, Clifton.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of great things about you, and I'll just tell you real quick something I noticed when I looked you up is that you're based out of Waxahachie, Texas, and I've been through there. Thought about going when I was searching colleges back when I was a teenager. I checked out a college there, school, and we talked about that a little bit pre-interview. That you attended there at Southwestern University, and so I don't know. We might ask you a few questions about that and how you segued into Loophole. But before we do that, I just want to ask Josh and Nick kind of what's new in your world. You want to go first, Josh?
Well, yeah, sure. I actually figured out how to use my Fulltone GT500. I went online, and it's a really, I guess, a pretty maligned pedal on the forums. And so I did a crazy thing, and I went and I read the manual. I went online and found the manual. It's like, oh, so the gain stages work in certain spaces as like a boost, and as other stages as like a fat knob, and then as a final stage on the boost side as a distortion. And then on the other side, the way that the EQ works and the way that the gain works is kind of similar, where there's these little ranges where it's a different pedal as you get onto those ranges. So it's really versatile, and you can dial it in. But if you don't know that, and you're thinking, hey, I just want more gain, or hey, I want this pedal to fatten up, you're going to constantly be using the knobs backwards. So what's new for me this week is that I read a manual.
Well,
and it was really useful.
Yeah, I'm really bad about that. Just like, especially with pedals, like I just want to start, messing with the knobs and everything. And I thought it was funny, like some of the guys that came back from NAMM were like, I think Aaron Abubo had gotten that Chase Bliss womb tone, and like he was talking about how he had, like, I think it was him or maybe it was Tim Ballant that was talking about how they had read through the manual on this thing, and like it was pretty extensive. And that's just something I've not done. Like maybe I could find out some really cool things. I know, like one thing that I've been meaning to try this week and I haven't gotten to is I wanted to take my Flashback and run into itself, like through the stereo thing, like you were doing with your Alter Ego.
You'll love it.
Yeah. I've been wanting to try that, but I just haven't had time. Actually, my pedal board, when I got that JHS Twin 12 last week, and I put that on my board, like I'm really confused about which order of drive that I want, because I'm thinking that it needs to be like the last one because it's the preamp. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, like, I want to treat it like if that wasn't there, like that's where I would put my amp in the equation.
Yeah.
And so like everything, so that's like I'm treating it like it's an amp, and I'm running my amp clean. So I'm kind of been tweaking with that. I liked running my Fulltone OCD into that, but the Jekyll and Hyde, like I start getting that, like the OCD and the Jekyll and Hyde, and then the Twin 12, and it gets way too fizzy, like way too quick. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. I don't know, I might kind of pick Mike's brain a little bit on that, what he thinks.
Sure.
Look at this guy with all his drive pedals.
Yeah, he's starting to look like a P-dubber with a stacking gain stages and stuff.
He's like, he's gain staging at church now.
Hey, you know what?
I thought you just strummed a Taylor.
Most of the time, that's all I do. You're right.
Pretty much. Yep. All right. So,
I just want to point out that I think it's funny that every week we do this, and you guys are increasingly talking more and more about your dirty tones, but neither one of you really do that at church.
No.
Well, you know what? Actually, this week I am. I'm gonna get. And even last week I got pretty dirty with my drive. It's just, you get past a certain point, and it really blends well with an acoustic guitar if you've got enough drive going, where it actually kind of sounds like a square wave synth. I've been doing that a lot lately.
Yeah.
Josh or Mike. Josh is our soundscapist.
Soundscapist.
Yes, he's our true P-dubber here, edge style.
I suppose so.
Biggest board out of all of us. I know you asked us what was all on our boards earlier, and nobody really responded. But Josh has the biggest board.
Yeah.
There's not really anything good on it, but it's a big board.
Yeah. Ouch. Oh, that hurts.
See, and I'm more like I would consider myself more of like a blues or country player, like the way I approach my pedal board, because all I have is drives, and then I have like my Flashback and then my Polera. So I'm not doing a lot of stuff, with my board. So
but it's a Flashback 4X, so it's a big Flashback, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it takes up a tremendous amount of real estate on my board. And
yeah, those are pretty big. I have an Alter Ego X4 that I just love.
I've had a lot of people encourage me to like get rid of my Flashback and get that one.
Well, that's the thing. If you don't, it's almost all. If it's got some of the same settings my Alter Ego has, the small one, it's a lot of modulated delays. There's not a clean delay on there, and you have to put that into one of your tone print spots. So that's something to think about. I really like. I use this SP button. I think that's Space Echo. Is that the SP? I use that all the time with mine because I love the modulation on it. But there are some on there that are just flat out weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, but too much.
Yeah. So, what we didn't ask you yet, Clifton.
Yeah. Okay. So I got off on this pedal rant. So what's new is my pedal board is completely kind of up in the air right now. Like I'm trying to, get my pedal order down again. And I had an equation that worked, but this 212, I like really love it, but like I'm struggling. Okay, how does this fit on my board, like, and where do I need it to be? And so I kind of got so used to the way it was that I'm kind of having to rethink things. And so other than that, I'm just kind of coming off the high of NAMM.
Yeah.
I went to NAMM last week, and it was a crazy thing, and I finally rested up again and back to normal, back to my routine, and just trying to I'm kind of going through some content that I had forgot and trying to get that published, and it's interesting. I'm kind of getting back in my groove again, so that's what's new with me. What about you, Nick?
Well, what's new for me is, and this is going to segue more into our guest here, but last week I talked about my Ibanez CF7 pedal, the Coral Flange, which I bought a while back for like $35, and I liked it, but the switch was acting funny, and I figured it was just a switch issue, and I'd step on it and it just wouldn't work unless I stepped on it a certain way. At least that's what I thought in my head, and then I'm like, all right, I have to get this fixed. And I saw one of Mike's pedals. He did a rehousing of a Ibanez PH7 that was absolutely insane, all modded, looked awesome. And I was like, well, if this guy can do that, then he's got to be able to fix this, because I'm not going to do it, because there's like 3 circuit boards in these stupid things. So I got a hold of Mike, and Mike sent me a message right back, and he said, yeah, I can put a different switch in it. And what I wanted was just to drill the switch out and put a different switch in it. That's it. Like, I wanted a normal stomp box switch, and that's it. Didn't really want it modded or anything. I was kind of on a budget, so I sent it to him, and then he did it for me. And then he realized that it didn't work still, and then looked into it further and found that Robert Keeley kind of found out the same thing the hard way, that after hours of drilling into these things, they got a little bit of a glitch and like a little bit of a board issue. And when these switches are bad, it's usually because of something on the board. And he really couldn't, without hours and hours of, and even then, when you're dealing with these little circuit boards like that, you could just make it worse or just break the pedal, so it wasn't worth it. So I said, all right, well, I like the switch anyway. I guess I'll eat it. So Mike sent it back to me, and actually it's back on my board again, and other than the fact that I have to double tap it every once in a while, it really isn't that bad at all. And Mike, what kind of switch did you put in this thing? It's kind of like the one that's on the it's not the click switch. It's like the one that's on the Pelican Noiseworks half horse. It's that one that doesn't click.
Right. It's a soft touch momentary switch, I guess is what they call them.
Yeah, and I love it. It's actually, and it makes it better because like, and I don't know if you did this on purpose. I'm assuming you did, but like since it's got a switch issue, if like I was clicking that thing constantly, like I just wore that switch out. Since it's the soft touch switch, if it doesn't fire the first time, I just hit it really quick again and it comes on.
That's awesome.
So in a way, that's kind of like Morse code on an old whatever. It's like stutter switch. You fix the pedal.
Yes.
You'll never notice it.
But no, really, this thing, it sounds great. I mean, I really love this pedal though. The flange works great. The chorus works great. If you really, I don't really get too crazy with it, like a lot of people do in the Wicked setting. But I like it. So. But anyway, that kind of, I just appreciated, Mike, I appreciated your honesty on the whole thing. And you know, your service, you had great service and you did a great job. And even though like, I didn't really have you mod anything, like we figured we had to have you on the show and talk about the other stuff that you do, cause we're curious. So with that, I think we should just lead right into Mike's interview.
Yeah. Well, first of all, before we do that, I want to comment on that pedal. And you threw up a clip last night, I believe, on the Clifton Worley show group, and it was you were playing slide and with it, and it, man, I love the way that the flanger. I never thought about using flanger with the slide, but like it sounded kind of like that Joe Walsh Rocky Mountain Way kind of tone.
I didn't even notice that until you pointed it out.
Yeah.
But I love that sound. That's what I use flangers for. And that real, for some reason, when you put a little bit of flanger on something, when you're playing like that kind of music, it gives it a swampy feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like, for some reason, I feel like, and I think what that comes from, Clifton, is the Rocky Mountain Way sound, because that's that real greasy, laid back Joe Walsh slide sound, you know. So
yeah,
that's what I use it for, and it always makes me want to play like kind of strummier and like more riff oriented when I put it on. But yeah,
I know we're making Josh's head explode talking about Joe Walsh, but I don't care.
No. But that right there, that Rocky Mountain Way song was pre-Eagles.
Walsh pre-Eagles.
So that's okay.
Very important.
That's okay. We start talking Eagles, then we're gonna have an issue here.
Okay, I will leave the Eagles alone, except to note the fact that they won the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Well, that's another topic, but not the same Eagles. Okay, let's not go down that rabbit hole. So Mike, now I would like to get a little backstory on kind of how you got into this, and we'll kind of go from there. But I mean, how'd you get started making pedals, man?
Let's see. I guess that all started a few years ago. I got a Line 6 DL4, you know, the big green legendary delay.
Indeed.
And when I bought it, one of the switches wasn't working. And I was like, what the heck, man? I just bought this thing. And the guy who I bought it from, he said it was working when I got it, or when he sent it. So I don't know, he wouldn't refund it or whatever. So I just decided I was going to fix it myself, you know, kind of a DIY. You know, we always fixed our own stuff around the house when I was growing up. So I opened it up, and I was just kind of dumbfounded at the circuitry. Like, there's, you know, circuit boards and switches and plungers in that thing, jacks everywhere. And so I started reading and researching, and started figuring it out. Thought I figured it out, fried the pedal, and you know, just made a brick out of it. I bought 2 more that were broken on eBay, thinking that I could fix those too. And I was hooked, man. I mean, from frying pedals to building them, that's just kind of how it started.
Yeah. So how long ago was that?
See, that was May 2016, so a couple years ago.
Oh wow! So you've gone like full speed ahead in a couple years from going to mod these pedals to where like you're having people send you pedals now, and and you got Loophole going on. So what? Tell me a little bit about like Loophole. Is that are you doing original designs? Are you doing like modding pre-existing circuits?
All the above. I have 2 pedals right now that are still in kind of the prototyping stage.
Okay.
That are based off of let's see, they're based off of existing pedals, but there's a few tweaks and modifications. I won't get too much into that because I'm trying to leave it for a surprise for later in the year, or if the project just ends up getting trashed. I don't want to build too much of a hype.
Yeah.
But basically, the original pedals that I produced will be mostly based off of something else, but something that I feel is in the market is there's like 1 million copies. I mean, someone will change maybe one resistor and call it original, you know? It's boring to me, so I at least try to add a few extra toggle switches, like you saw with that Ibanez FZ7 rehouse. It started as a fuzz, and I just added and added and added to it, and it turned out really awesome. That one also had the same issue as your Ibanez flange. The switch was a little unpredictable on it. Yeah, those are just crazy. The tone lock series are weird. But anyway, yeah, I do custom builds. I've built some clones. I've modded a lot of stuff. I've built a lot of utility pedals, like little patch bays or buffers, little mini expression pedals. Looking forward, though, into 2018, I'm looking to do more building. Some clones, and obviously I'm still doing all the mods that I have been doing. So I'm intentionally going to be releasing a line, like an official line that someone can just go to my website and click, you know, buy this, it looks awesome. But I'm also expanding my mod service line, actually completely redoing the website, which that's a whole another side story in itself. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So as far as like, and I want to ask you this because I've asked, you know, other builders this before. When it comes to building your own designs, are you like breadboarding these out? Are you trying to? Are you intending to put these on like PCBs later, or do you want to like do everything hand wired? What's kind of your approach there?
Yeah, the first thing I do is draw the schematic out. You know, if I'm basing my design off of something that already exists, I'll do a print off of the existing schematic, and I'll look around to see what has already been done to it. So, for example, if there's a tube screamer, obviously there's a mod you can turn it a TS9 into a TS808 or a TS9 to a TS10. And then there's clipping diodes that you can do to kind of change the texture of the distortion that's clipping. I'll start as a base, like have some familiar mods that are already existing so people know what it is right off the bat. It's not something that's completely unknown to them. And then from there, I'll expand it into something even better. I'll add maybe a distortion blend knob of some type, or I'll mix it with the dry signal, or I mean, there's a million different things you can do, and there's so many resources online that are, you know, freely available if you're willing to put forth the research and education wise. So anyway, to answer your question, yeah, most of the stuff is original, I would say, and it's not original to the point of just tweaking a few components. It's like definitely changing certain parts of the circuit so it sounds a bit different than everything else.
Okay. All right, and like you're talking about designing your own prototypes. Are you planning on like building these by hand and then like having somebody like one of these PCB companies build that board so you can populate it, or are you planning on like hand wiring circuits?
I've done some hand wiring on tag board is what they call it, or strip board, and it's just extremely time consuming, and also it's really difficult to figure out what you did wrong if something isn't working. There's like 100 different places where the circuit could short out or whatever. So I draw the schematic out, figure out what I want it to do, where I want it to clip, at what frequencies, use a frequency calculator, and figure out what low pass and high pass filters I want to use, figure out how the diodes clip, all that information and research behind that. And then I have drawn my own PCBs out with software before, but I also have a guy who does it for me, just because it's very time consuming. Something I noticed is the best people at what they do leverage other people's abilities and cooperate with other people to really attain their goals so they can do it the best way possible. So there is a PCB guy that I use. He's really cool. He's a professional in his industry. It's what his day job is, basically. And I'll send my schematic to him. He'll draw it on a PCB. And then I'll have a company produce the PCB. And then it comes back to me where I build it, figure out if I like how it sounds, if the theory was as good as the practical side. And that's where I'm at with my 2 drive pedals that I hope to release this year sometime.
So let me get this straight. You're like an electrical engineer then, or something by trade, right?
Nope, no sir. I'm currently an office manager. I just graduated with my MBA this past December, and I'm looking around for the next full-time job occupation until Loophole Pedals blows up and becomes the dream.
Wow. So you learned all of this from frying pedals to making these beautiful housings and being able to just, draw out a circuit in a couple years?
Pretty much. Countless hours of reading and a lot of failures, but yeah.
That's amazing.
And the drawings of the graphics, I also have a graphics guy who's just phenomenal. He does some contract work too. His name's Wade. Really awesome guy.
Beautiful tops on there. Just something else there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, what is your favorite kind of pedal to think about or work on? I mean, do you let's go a little more specific. Let's talk about mods. Like, what is your favorite kind of pedal to mod, I guess, or your favorite model to mod? Or if it's easier, the stuff you hate to work on.
Whatever's easiest.
Yeah, I love working on easy stuff because it's simpler, and it doesn't take as much time. Most of my mods I only charge $40 a mod or $25 a mod depending on the mod. So if it takes me 2 hours to research what it does and where it goes, there goes all the profit. So I definitely prefer things that are easier, of course. But to say my favorite mod, gosh, man, that's a hard one. I mean, I love making distortions have different characters than what they originally had without sacrificing what they already do. So, for example, I've modeled a couple Boss HM2s, the heavy metal chainsaw, Swedish death metal pedal that doesn't get a lot of love in the P&W scene. But I've taken that pedal and did a few mods on it called the Rockers mod. And it kind of tames down the square waves of it and brings it down to more of a little bit softer clipping, so it's more of a distortion. But it has 2 toggle switches on the back to enable and disable like a fuzz mode. And then there's another toggle switch that kind of changes the distortion texture. So it can go everything from a clean boost all the way to your Swedish death metal. So it just opens up all the possibilities of it. I really love it.
Sounds awesome.
Does sound cool. Sounds useful.
It's totally a sleeper. Like, you look at it and you think death metal, and then you can tweak it in such a way where it's a nice smooth overdrive.
You said you do that to that hyper metal pedal?
Hyper metal is the HM3. This one's the HM2, the heavy metal.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
But I could probably do the same thing. I haven't really looked at the schematic of the HM2 or HM3, but I could probably do something similar, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I have a question along that line. Okay, so I see a lot of guys who tinker with pedals, and or even guys who mod them, and it seems like that the Boss platform seems to be very attractive. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's because, one, there's a million of them out there, so everybody has a Boss pedal. And the second is the schematics are widely available.
Gotcha.
You type in Boss DS1 mods, and there's probably a dozen mods that come up. You can easily find the schematic of it. Also because they're cheap.
Yeah.
Like if you want something that you don't have to worry about destroying, small investment, Boss pedals, not even $100, you can get a Boss pedal, just about any of them.
Yeah, I see that, and I mean, like, take the DS1 for instance. Like, you can pick those up, used for next to nothing, and then go in and just go to town on them.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, I could see that. Well, going back to like that Line 6 pedal, is that a bear to work on? Or I know there was some unreliability in like some of the things that I know it used to be popular. Like if the guys who had them on the road would get like 2 or 3 of these things because there was some wonky things going on. Did you find that there were like certain liabilities in that pedal that are in their design that kept them from being all that they could be?
Oh yeah, the DL4 is notorious for the switches going bad. I mean, it's basically the switch that I put on that flange of yours. It's a self-contained switch, meaning it's one piece that you connect wires to. The switches in the DL4, they're tactile switches, so they're momentary switches. Think of like a button on the side of your watch. Like they're a push button tactile switch, kind of similar to that. I guess is the first thing that comes to mind. And to push that switch down, what you see is a piece of metal, your foot switch, and that's connected to a spring. And that spring is what actually pushes the button. It's not self-contained. So there's dirt that gets in there. I mean, if you spill something on your pedal, those switches are going to be soaked. Of course, the circuit board too. But yeah, and there's some other reliability issues that I have come across with them. Sometimes there's a RAM chip in them that comes loose or unseated. Sometimes if there's one that's broken, you just take it off and put it back on and reseat it, and it'll work again. But mainly the main unreliable thing is the switches. And something else that's interesting is these same switches are used in the M series that Line 6 produces. So the M5, the M9, and the M13 are the 3, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so I have an M13 in the shop. I mean, huge pedal. It has like 16 switches on it or whatever, and half of them don't work. So it's just sitting there until I get around to replacing the switches with the industrial.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know, like, for instance, like I took apart a Danelectro Fab Echo one time, and I was gonna add a speed control in there to make it like a full-fledged delay instead of like that slapback delay. And I got into some major problems in there. First of all, like the surface mount board, like it was so hard, like everything was so close together that like you touch your iron here, you're touching another pin on that chip, and like it got wonky real quick. And then the other thing is like my iron touched the enclosure and like melted the plastic inside. So now like the switch wouldn't make contact on, like, I think I know what you're describing as the tactile switch, is that there was actually a lever in there that touched a little button on the board.
Yeah, it's like a little button.
Yeah. And so it messed all that up. And so like the only thing I could do is probably if somebody came in and like cleaned up, if I didn't burn the chip, clean up the pins there and then rehouse this, because that enclosure is trash now. And so, but you think, okay, well, I could go buy that same pedal for $30, like the actual Dan Electro delay, instead of spending all day long trying to fix this thing. And so it's just, it kind of come to that point like in pedals. But so I would imagine like the popular stuff that's on the used market that can be snatched up for cheap, or the higher end pedals that have metal enclosures and good switches and stuff would be good things to try, like a good platform to mod, versus these things with plastic enclosures that are next to nothing that you could just go buy the next one anyways, right?
Yeah, sometimes it all depends on what you want to do and what your budget is.
Yeah, now
I
we're
quote free houses for Dan Electro stuff all the time. People just love how good it sounds. Same with Barrington pedals.
yeah.
The Barrington pedals are just clones of Boss pedals,
Totally. I've always been a Dano fan, and I've always thought about having stuff done too. In fact, because my first couple of effects pedals was actually, I had a Dan Electro Fab Tone and a Dan Electro Daddy-O, and I've had a couple of those really cheap ones too. I have the Fab Overdrive, which is just that gray one. It's in the little plastic gray enclosure, and I really like that pedal also. But the thing doesn't fit on a board very well, and it just drives me crazy. So I don't use it much. But it's actually a really good boost pedal. But I always, every time I buy a cheap one, I'm like, oh, I want to get this rehoused. I like it so much. But then I just find another one that sounds better, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't really need that all that much. But just real quick, I did want to touch on something you were talking about. Well, two things. Well, the first thing was that delay, the line 6 you were talking about. I had a friend that had that same issue. He had that damn thing for like 2 weeks, and it just stopped one day. Never figure out what was wrong with it. And I mean, we're talking a high school kid here. Kevin saved up to get that thing.
Yeah.
And it was just dead weight. And we had a line 6. We had the gold one, the distortion one, with the compressor on it. And that one sounded great, especially with the compressor, but we ended up getting rid of that one because we were afraid it was going to do the same thing as Kevin's did. So we were like, yeah, we're selling this pedal. And I'm glad we did, but I mean, it did sound good when it was working, but man, I could, because what were they when they were new? They were like, I want to say like $230 or $200 or something like that.
Yeah, like 250. Yeah,
crazy. And he was all jacked about it because it was my shredder friend, and he was getting into some like, Vi stuff or whatever he was doing at the time, and like he wanted that with the multiple banks. The other story I had was, so I wanted to get into modding, and I bought a DS1, and I wanted to do the Brown Sound mod to it. Like the I don't know, what is that, like, Mike, like it's like a plexi mod or something that like makes it sound like Marshall-y.
Yeah, like a JCM.
Yeah, basically, and I know that tone control on those things can be really like harsh sounding and not very usable and whatnot. So I bought a kit, and they sent it to me, and I only had a 30-watt soldering iron, and I like immediately, like, I cracked it open, looked at it, and I like immediately fried the board. And I sent it to a guy. I found a mod service on eBay, and I sent it to a guy, and he goes, I'll take a look at it. And he got it, and he's like, who did this? And I go, why? And he goes, because I want them to stop. and I go, it was me. And he goes, what soldering iron were you using? Throw it away.
Oh man, that hurts.
That hurts. We had a good laugh about it. He fixed it, but it was completely like, he goes, you fried like 20% of the components off this board. Like, he had to like redo a bunch of things, and he's like, never tried it to like, like when you get into this thing, he's like, just be careful with it. He's like, I think he had to like goop it, like, to protect it, because stuff was all messed up. Like, I don't know, but it sounded pretty good. I ended up selling the thing, and I probably shouldn't have, because it had a really good sound after that. But that's when I just gave up. Like that's just not my thing anymore.
Was that before or after your Screaming Bird there, Nick?
Actually, I did mod the Screaming Bird myself, but I had a 15-watt iron, and that was 2 components. I turned a Screaming Bird, I turned a Screaming Bird boost into a LPB1, basically, like the full range boost. I just swapped a component or two, like a capacitor or something. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, it was like a .047. Yeah, I changed some kind of 2N thing into a .047 cap or something like that, and that changed it into an LPB1. But
yeah, right on. Built a couple LPB1s. Yeah.
What's that?
I built a couple LPB1s. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first one. I actually did a pedal build. I ordered like a kit that was just like a really basic kit, and I have one of those laying around too. It was like called the Confidence Boost, and it was basically just an LPB1.
Now let me interrupt here because I'm thinking something. I don't know what that is, and so I want to tell our listeners, what is a LPB?
It's it was Electro Harmonix's like first product. It was their boost pedal.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what is it in the inside there, Mike?
It's a really, really small circuit. It's a nice, clean boost. I prefer another boost, an AMZ booster. Jack Orman originally designed it. I feel that the AMZ booster is a bit cleaner. It doesn't color it quite as much, and it doesn't have really any grit in it. The AMZ also has, it doesn't really affect the frequencies a lot, so you can use it on bass too. So the LPB is going to change, I mean, not super noticeably, but it'll change especially at the high volumes when you really crank it. It's going to add a little bit of gain.
Interesting.
A lot of guys like to put the LPB in front of a fuzz pedal.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In front of it, huh? Yeah, that's cool.
No,
Yeah,
I
kind
never
of stack them.
Interesting.
That sounds
Yeah,
like a
that's-
great pedal idea to have a fuzz with like a boost built into it like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the LPB one, just because I like the way it did color it. I had especially when I was working when I play it through my like a 5-watt tube amp. I really liked the pedal. And I don't know, I felt like it almost tightened it up a little bit. I don't know. But yeah, it was really I really liked it. That kind of got me hooked on it. That's why I bought the Screaming Bird, and I actually really liked that Screaming Bird pedal after I modded it. It was awesome. It was totally unusable when I first bought it.
Plus, this nicer looking graphic on it.
Yeah, the graphics great. What were you saying, Mike?
What brand is that Screaming Bird?
Electro Harmonix.
Okay, I'm just not familiar with that one.
Yeah, that one. Well, I wasn't either. But every time I kept on typing in like boost or treble booster, that kept coming up, and it does boost the treble, and that's it.
Yeah.
It pretty much. The only time I've ever heard it actually used effectively is when somebody was using like an old high watt, and or an old orange head, and they were just goosing it. Yeah. And it really gave you that, with a humbucker, it really gave you that trebly bite. But it sucks your lows. It's not a very good pedal. I don't know what they were, they basically, what I've heard about them is that they were designed for a different time, and that they're basically an unusable pedal now. But I don't know. Like I said, I really like this. And the thing is it didn't totally turn it into an LPB1 because the circuits aren't totally the same. So there's a couple other things, because I put it side by side with my other one, and the one still has a little bit of a treble kick, and I really actually like how it sounds. So yeah, anyway.
Cool.
I'm flipping through your stuff here on your Facebook page, and I found this thing you did, this expression pedal router that's all passive, and you've got this really neat way of putting the volume on the side there.
Yeah.
Why don't more pedal builders put the volume knob on the side of it and the expression knob on the side of these pedals? I mean, that's such a cool idea. I love that. I mean, if you can just crank that knob with your foot rather than having to get up on top of that pedal, you got that giant knob on the side of this 4-button router, and man, that's sweet.
Yeah, that one was commissioned as a custom build. A guy basically wanted Oh man, it was crazy. I'm trying to remember all the details of it now. He wanted to use one expression pedal to control several different effects at once.
Wow.
Or not at once, I'm sorry, because it's passive. If it was active, I could do something more like all at once, but he wanted to use his one expression pedal and switch between which pedal it controlled.
Yeah, you got 4 switches here. Yep.
Yeah. So he, sent the request, and we talked about it for a while. And that knob on the side is an expression knob, kind of like the expression mod on the DL4, where you can add a little foot knob instead of plugging in your own expression pedal.
Man, it's cool.
That way, if he was having his travel board or a smaller board or whatever that he couldn't fit his expression pedal, he could just use the knob on the side. And that one took a lot of time. It was a lot of internal wiring.
Yeah, I bet. Now that's a trip there. I mean, I've always thought that was like the way to go with like a volume knob or an expression knob, and I just don't know why there isn't more people making that, because you see those nose pedals and that other company that makes those rollerball expressions, and I just think that a knob where you can just really subtly adjust it and then put your foot off and you're done. That's just such a sweet idea. Man, so cool.
Well, I got one more question. You talked about sleeper pedals earlier. What are some sleeper pedals that you would recommend? I know a lot of guys that are in this community are always looking for that flip or that pedal that's maybe everybody's overlooking. What are some good sleeper pedals that you would recommend to grab up off the used market?
Oh man. Trying to think off the top of my head. Let me see what I have just around the shop real quick. Oh, if you're looking for an amp modeler and something really cheap that you can just plug in headphones to or go even direct in. And I know a lot of guys already know about this one, but the Joyo American Sound is a preamp with a built-in cab sim to emulate Fender-style amps, and it just sounds really good. Really good. It's like
That's
$40
cool.
or 20 or $40, somewhere in there.
Is there anything you can do with that?
Mod-wise?
Yeah.
There are. I've seen some guys add a direct out, like a XLR out on it.
Oh, that'd be cool.
There's a mod where you can disable the cab sim.
That's what I was going to ask.
Use your own cab sim instead, but it kind of makes the pedal sound real weird. Like, it makes it sound really kind of, not shrill, but just too much high frequencies. You know, that cab sim in there is going to darken the tone of it so it sounds like it's supposed to. You know, it has the speaker cone and the cab darkness in it or whatever. But
Man,
there's a couple things that you can do, and of course I can rehouse them someday when I get around to it. I have all 4 of the Joyo amp character sims: the California Sound, the AC Tone, which emulates the AC30, the British Sound. I think it's supposed to be like a JCM sound, I think. And then the California Sound, which is supposed to be like a Mesa type of sound. One of these days, I'm going to rehouse them and put them all in one box. That would just be so cool.
That would be amazing.
That'd be awesome. That'd be a perfect fly rig. Yeah.
Yes, it'd be like the ultimate preamp.
Yeah, that's so cool.
One of these
For
days.
sure. Yeah.
I've heard the AC tone's really quite good.
Yes, that's my second favorite of the 4. I would say if I had to rate them, American Sound would be first, AC Tone would be second, British, and then the California at the last.
Now, before we get into picks, if I have one question too, the new TC smorgasbord pedals. Boy, I can't say that word either. Those look like they're just ripe for modding. They're in great enclosures, and they're decently built, and they've got well-liked stuff underneath the hood. I'm just wondering if you see those as the same opportunities I do. It's like, man, I saw Ryan from 60 Cycle Hum do that really cool mod to this, like, what was it, kind of a weird oscillation mod to the digital delay. But it just seems like those are just right for it. Plus they're $50, so if you put a $40 mod in, you could, or your time into it, you could probably turn around and flip those with a mod pretty easily for $100 or $120 and do something really interesting with a circuit that everybody loves with the TC switch in it and a decent, decent knobs. You wouldn't have to do a whole lot to them. Have you looked into those at all?
I saw when they came out, very interesting stuff. Behringer actually bought out TC Electronics a little bit ago. I don't think it was too long ago. So with that line, you're looking at, in my opinion, the new Behringer lineup. They kind of took TC's name, which has a great quality standard, and Behringer is releasing their cheaper line through TC. So for me, I'm kind of sitting back to see how they do in a couple of years, if they're going to fall apart or if they're going to be reliable, solid tank-like pedals, like Boss pedals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could mod them, sure. They're just clones of things that already exist, pretty much all of them.
I can see that, yeah.
I'm just wondering how they're going to hold up. Because what I don't want to happen is me mod a pedal and say, oh, yeah, that's great. If anything breaks, just let me know. And then 3 months later, go figure, the whole pedal falls apart and it's my fault. So so I'm just wondering about the durability of them. I mean, they're fantastic effects, they sound great, but I'm kind of taking a back seat on that one just to see what happens.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, the enclosures look good, but I don't know, are they using, like, I'm assuming they're probably using like the micro surface mount boards.
Yeah. Well, I think they are. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, everything mass produced now, pretty much everything mass produced now is using the surface mount components, which those used to really scare me, but now I'm starting to get into them. My buffered splitter actually uses a surface mounted transistor in there, but I'm getting more into surface mounted stuff because one of the things I really like to do is put more stuff in one effect, whether it's 2 pedals and 1 enclosure, or more options, more toggles, more switches, more knobs, whatever. And the smaller I can get it, the better. Chase Bliss does an amazing job of that. I mean, they're just wizards. So, surface mounted stuff, to me, it's equally reliable. It just depends on where it's made and if the people making it wanted good quality control or if they're just trying to crank stuff out.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I think it's just learning to get to work on them, and like I would imagine most of your hobbyists don't know what to do with that because it's so tiny and they don't have the proper equipment to work on it, and so it's kind of like, well, it's just easier to get something else, instead of work with that.
Yeah, for people who are new to modding, I would definitely recommend something they call Throughhole design, which is basically just means not surface mount. There's a hole where the component leads go through, and then you solder the pads to the leads of the component.
Yeah,
I would definitely recommend Throughhole before even attempting anything surface mount for sure.
Yeah. Well, cool.
So, Mike, what's the weirdest 2 you've ever stuck together then, pedal wise?
Yeah, that's a good question.
There must be some weird ones because he's thinking.
I've quoted out a lot of weird stuff that didn't turn into orders. Probably the most unfamiliar thing that happened, it was actually Wade's Rehouse, the guy who does a lot of my graphics that we collab together with designs. He came to me and he wanted his, he had a boost by a company that doesn't exist anymore. They don't sell pedals, they just sell PCBs, the circuit boards that go in pedals. So he had a boost from them, and then he had a, I think it was a compressor from another company, like another boutique company. He's like, hey man, I really like these 2. Can you put them in 1 enclosure? So I'm thinking, oh yeah, sure. And then I get them in, and my first thought was, oh God, if I mess something up, there's no possible way I can replace these things. But it all worked out in the end, and he got an awesome rehouse. That one is the banana stand rehouse on my Facebook or Instagram. It's yellow, you can't miss it.
I saw a super cool looking thing. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's a tribute to the show Arrested Development, if you've ever seen that show. It's pretty fun.
Now I'm just gonna sit around and think of weird stuff I can throw together.
Do it, man. Do it.
I'm gonna buy a DS1 and I'm gonna have you put my Screaming Bird and the DS1 in one enclosure.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So-
awesome. Well, so you can be found at Loophole Pedals. That's a tongue twister for me. Loopholepedals.com, and I was just browsing through there, and it shows some of the pedals that you like to mod and some of the work you've done in the rehouses, and I also look forward to your what you prototype and what you come out with here in the near future. I'll be looking forward to that. So we're gonna move on to our picks, and I know we asked you, Mike, to come up with picks. So I'm gonna let you go first. Do you have a pick that you would like to share? Something that you're digging music-wise that you would like to share with our group?
Yeah, I'd say that one song. I was just chilling at my day job. As I said, I'm an office manager at my day job, and I just had Spotify on, jamming some tunes, and this remix came on. It just blew me away. I mean, I'm working on my work, and it just was really inspiring. It's kind of a sadder song, I guess, but this guy remixed it and kind of added a electronic but kind of jazzy piano sound. It's really cool.
So I'm gonna play a little bit of
Way to the end of longing, but everyone holds their loves close. I think too much when I think about the future. I think too much when I think about the future. I think too much.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just picks up from there. That's the kind of jazzy piano part, and it gets a little bit heavier with like a electronic, EDM, dubstep, whatever sound.
I'm gonna try a little bit of that.
When I think of
Holy cow! So it goes in a weird direction. They're almost all the way through. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
That was
it totally twists. My ears just kind of perked up when I was going throughout my day. It's like, whoa.
That's cool. Do you know
Yeah.
anything else about that band, or is it just something that popped up on your feed, or on
Yeah,
your?
it's just kind of something that popped up on my feed. I have like 4 different playlists that Spotify auto-generates for me based on what I listen to, and that song was The Future, the Anomaly remixed by San Holo. So, yeah, I mean, pretty jamming.
Super
That's
cool,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since mine kind of relates, like in the sound, it's kind of got that vintage soul type of sound too. I'll go next. My pick for this week is Mark Broussard. I can't remember where I heard him, but I was like really into him a couple months ago, and then I was scrambling for a pick this week, and I remembered he did this album of all the old like 70s and 60s R&B hits,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna play for you guys a little bit of his "Cry to Me" acoustic version, and it's just his voice is amazing.
feel like crying. Don't you feel like crying? Here I am, honey. Come on, cry to me. When you're all alone.
Like, you don't expect
Yeah.
people from this time period to be able to sing like that. And I think he's a Louisiana native.
Yeah, he's South Louisiana guy, and he's very well known name around here. So I'm familiar with Mark.
He played Interlocking, but I missed him. I wanted to go to it, but I couldn't make it. Man, he just you can listen to him all day. He's got that classic sound in his voice, and everything that's arranged, it's arranged like that Stax way. All of his sounds on that album, it's just perfect. Just a beautiful R&B album. And that's my pick for this week.
That's
That
awesome.
sounded really good.
Yeah,
There's delay time on the delay too on the guitar.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it's acoustic guitar. He put that delay on. Really
Oh
interesting.
wow.
Yeah, I dug that too. I'm like, he's got a little bit of slapback on that guitar. I dig that.
Yeah, and you hear him go wild. He just goes. He can really dig in with that voice. It's just crazy what he can do. What about you, Clifton? What's your pick for this week?
Well, that's actually interesting, the picks you guys have, because I almost went down that direction. There was a group that I saw that I'd never heard of that has a new album out, and I almost picked it, but I then picked something else that kind of spoke to me a little bit more, and probably no surprise if you listen to it here in a minute. But my pick this week is Mike and the Moonpies. And they've got a new album that just released called Steak Night at the Prairie Rose, and let's just take a listen to that real quick.
A little bit of an intro here. Let's get that.
He used to truck, he drove for Swift. I met him out on Highway 9 when he gave me a lift. He's a rambler, gambler, he just quit drinking and he's on the road crew tonight. He's got 2 kids, he's got a wife. But don't let him fool you, cause he damn sure got a knife. He's a rambler, gambler, he just quit drinking and he's on the road crew tonight.
Wow, I love that. That's awesome.
That
It's got
spoke
some-
to me, like that's just right up my alley, being kind of a country picker. And so I had never heard of this group, and I immediately, okay, so how I found this was I was going through, and sometimes when I'm really trying to dig to the bottom of the well there, I go through iTunes and look for the new releases. And, it's pretty easy to filter out what just from the artwork sometimes, like what you might want to listen to or not. And I saw this, and it's got this dude, he's dressed in a cowboy hat and leather jacket, and it just kind of looks like a Western album. So I click on it, and the name of the album that's released is called Steak Night at the Prairie Rose. And the track we listened to grabbed me immediately, The Road Crew. And it's just a fun song, kind of talking about how he's got this guy on his road crew who's a roadie, and he just quit drinking, and he's just this crazy guy. And it's just a funny kind of comedic story. But the title track, Steak Night at the Prairie Rose, it's kind of, I would imagine it's a little autobiographical, from the writer's standpoint. It's about this guy who his parents split up, and his dad takes him to the Steak Night at the Prairie Rose every week, where they have this live cover band, and he falls in love with the music and ends up like sitting in with the band at an early age and just getting into the music scene. And then there's another track on this that grabbed my attention. It's called Beaches of Biloxi. And so I had to listen to that, being, down here from the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And it was kind of, it was a good song. But so I never heard of this group, Mike and the Moonpies, and I text my cousin who, he knows a lot of these bands, and he's on the road, and so I asked him if he was familiar with it. He was, but they spent years as a house band at one of the big country western places in Austin, Texas, and they kind of emerged out of that, and they kind of hit that circuit, like the Texas, Oklahoma, Midwest. If you look at their tour schedule, they kind of hit a lot of small places in the Southwest and South, but they're just kind of a honky-tonk band. And I don't know, it really grabbed me when I listened to it, especially the steel guitar. And so that's my pick for this week.
Man, I eat that story stuff up, man, and that's the best name ever.
Yeah.
Seriously. You won't forget it. I'd love to see that on a t-shirt.
Oh yeah.
I know. I'm gonna put that on. I'm gonna put that on Spotify tomorrow.
Yeah, me too.
That's sweet.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I went with an oldie but a goodie. I've always been a fan of this band, and mainly the sound, just the guitar sound has always just been, I mean, I found it incredible. It just makes me want to play guitar. It makes me want to listen. But mine is Suicide Doors by the Reverend Horton Heat. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard the Reverend, but he is just infectious with his tone and his guitar playing and his energy. So yeah, go ahead and kick it.
Man, that's kicking.
I mean, just the they always kind of refer to him as I've always referred to him as like Brian Setzer on steroids, but he's like punk rockabilly, and yeah, he's good.
I love it.
I think I've ever heard, and the double stops and the slapback and the the distortion in there. I mean, he runs really, really dirty actually in a lot of his tones. And yeah, he's just great. I don't know, love it.
This is the most aligned we've ever been, like with the picks. Usually we've all got vastly different ones, but there's really a good congruence of interesting stuff that's kind of all in the same vein. I could see all of these picks being in one playlist. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I could see them all playing like headlining like together, these bands.
Yeah, even the dubsteppy thing would be cool to be like, a little break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Be totally random too.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Mike? Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, I was just saying, just throwing in something different. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. That was kind of almost like a hint gospel-y, but then like went into dance, like electronica. I dug it.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what time is it?
It's time for the Mojo Minute, and I've got a special post-nom one for you guys too. And I'm actually really excited to talk about it because I actually did research and like I actually have real answers to questions and stuff. So
Right.
So, all right. Well, I want to talk about harmony. So, when Ryan from 60 Cycle Hum did his video about harmony guitars, and Clifton, actually before that, when Clifton was showing us pictures of the harmony relaunch from Nam, I got really interested, and I went on their website and I looked it up, and I kept hearing, they don't have prices or anything on there. So I was like, okay, I assumed they were going to launch like a $400 or $500 guitar line, maybe even cheaper, and kind of stick with the whole accessible budget harmony theme, American made, that everybody kind of remembers them as being before they moved overseas, when they were in Chicago and everything. So I was like, all right, well, we're going to get some budget guitars out of them, and it's going to be a really cool line, because I know that Teisco was also relaunched too, and they're doing some pedals and things like that. And we've seen Supro and some of these other brands in Eastwood, and doing these kind of like old cool designs but making better guitars. And then when Ryan did his video about how well made these are, and like how they feel like high-end instruments, and how the amps look amazing and all this other stuff like that, I was like, this doesn't seem like what Harmony was set out to do. This looks like they're going like after like Gibsons and stuff like that. Like they're going to be a really nice instrument that you're going to pay for. Mm-hmm. So I heard that they were owned by Heritage, and I heard that they were Heritage owned all, both Teisco and this one, and like there was all these rumors going around. So I did some research on this, and I actually found out that that is not true. The company that owns Harmony and Teisco is BandLab.
Yeah.
It's BandLab Technologies, and actually they're like so BandLab Technologies is a next generation social technology collective that integrates the physical and digital supply chain around music. Huh. So they're actually like yeah, it's hard to explain, but they also own mono case too.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't do anything low end. Like, this is not, I mean, we know how much mono cases are. This is very much a company that has done a lot of acquiring, and they're kicking out quality stuff. And I just thought it was really interesting that two of the companies they acquired the names for, Teisco and Harmony, are budget line stuff, but they're doing what looks to be really, really well made, high end gear. And if you go on their website, again, they've been really careful. They haven't leaked any of their pricing or anything like that. But I mean, it talks about what I find interesting. One of their things is, like, first they start off with like how they started in 1892, and it shows this old picture of them in the old shop and all that. Then the next thing they say is thoughtfully crafted for the modern musician, and then they go into inspired by the iconic harmony, shapes, and sounds of the past, and how this is all really well made, beautiful stuff. And then they mention that it's accessible, the same harmony tradition that's accessible for musicians. And it's like, well, I don't know how accessible it's going to be for most musicians. I guess I have to wait to see the price point. And they look incredible, and I totally dig it. The amps in particular, and the guitars that now they're not doing any hollow bodies or semi hollow bodies, which are a lot of harmonies are known for, but they're doing all solid bodies, probably to keep the price point down a little bit. But yeah, I'm really interested. But I'm also, the question I've got is this what we want? Is this what we want Harmony and Teisco to be? And will it work? I mean, we've already got a Supro, right? They started out as pretty high end, and now you can pick those up for ridiculously cheap. They're getting cleared out everywhere.
Yeah.
And then you've got Eastwood. They have some higher end guitars, but they're still right around the $500-$600 line, right? With some higher models and some lower models. So they already kind of own the whole Velcro look and everything, and kind of that whole deal. So where do these fit? I mean, are these going to go over? They got gold foils. That's really cool. That seem to be specially voiced for the instruments and stuff. They definitely have a vibe, but I don't know. Can you turn around a name that started in 1892? Can you totally take that and flip it on its ear and then try to get $800 to $1,000 for an instrument or more?
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels weird to me. What do you guys think?
Well, I have some thoughts on this. First of all, there was an interesting thread going on. I believe it was in 60 Cycle Hum. That somebody had bought an old Harmony, like off Reverb or something, and was complaining about like the string height being really high at the 12th fret. And like Doug Cower made a comment on there. It was like, look, like those old original harmonies, that's how they were set up. I think you commented on it, Nick. But a lot of those instruments really weren't like built to be great players. They were built budget minded, and yet there's a lot of cool mojo going on with those old guitars. And obviously, like Baxendale is, turning those guitars into just absolute works of art. But, I think there's a place for those cool mojo designs, but in not good players. I think there are guys who would be willing to spend in the $500 range and maybe on up with more features, but you start competing with the true boutique market when you get into over $1,000. I mean, you're looking at, do I want a Harmony? Do I want a Titan? you get into the 15 to 16 on up to 18, then you're thinking about, do I want an Equits or a Harmony, or do I want? Yeah, I mean, and it just keeps going on. There's tons of guitars that probably just options that you would have at that point. And so is the question to ask then, is Harmony in is of itself a name people are willing to pay a premium for? I don't think so, but I think if they could get in that 500 to 600 range, like where you're competing against that workhorse telly price range, I think they could be successful there. And I think where like Supro like kind of faced the same thing. Like when they came down this year on their prices, like it got aligned to where they probably need to be. One other comment I want to add, and then I'll let you, I'll let whoever wants to go next go on this. But I saw where Pat Chin had commented on the same thing, that they were owned by a company called Band Labs, and
Band Labs.
yeah, they
Band
own Tysco mono bags, and they own 49% interest in Rolling Stone magazine, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, they listed him as a partner, but I didn't know what that meant. So, that's interesting.
Well, if anybody would know, it would be Pat Chin, because he's got, he's been in the industry for years and he knows. So,
I didn't see his comment. I wish I would have now. Like I went, I did a bunch of Sherlock Holmes and it was all right there.
Yeah.
Though, I will say this. I think the Harmony Series 6 looks awesome. The amp.
Oh yeah. Now I would pay a premium for that.
It says it's point to point, or it's hand wiring. I think that means point to point. I'm not sure. 12-inch Jensen speaker, spring reverb, tremolo, and pull boost, and that looks cool. And then they did I really like that they did the Harmony Model 8418, which is the 6-inch Jensen, and has that really cool looking arch top graphic on it, and that really neat looking baffle, and those look like they could be some seriously cool amps. Again, I don't know where they're gonna put that, but I mean, they weren't really I don't know, they don't even put the wattage down on here, so I don't even know what that is. But I mean, most of these old Harmony amps and the old Silvertones amps and stuff are known as recording amplifiers.
Yeah. Low wattage, right?
Yeah, the cool crank tones you can get, that Jack White kind of thing. So yeah, I guess we just wait and see. Josh, what about you? What about you, Mike? I mean, anybody got any comments on it?
Yeah, for this stuff, I'm not too interested. I mean, at all, really. I gotta be honest with you. It's just, I mean, they're cool looking things, but at the end of the day, they're guitars. The amps maybe more so, but I mean, they're really interesting looking, but until I actually play it, it's a guitar. It's really cool looking, but that's my thing. It's like, I mean, I've played one or two Gibsons that I've been like wow about, but everything else I really don't understand what the deal is. But that's me though. I'm very utilitarian about instruments. So
yeah.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, you're fired. Go ahead, Mike.
I guess I'm taking Josh's place.
Go ahead.
The Harmony and Silvertone stuff, I love it, man. I had a Harmony H303A. It's a little, I guess it's a 15-watt tube amp, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
And, man, that thing was awesome. It only had one control volume, but it had like 3 inputs, I want to say.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, the amps back then, everybody plugged into one amp for the most part, and you played out of that. It's a totally different world than how it is now, where everybody has, one guy has got a Fender, one guy has an Orange, and everybody goes mic'd up into this system. I mean, they didn't really have the same setups as we do now. So if you're at a small gig, everybody plugged into the amp, and then you crank the volume up, and then that's the sound you had. I mean, there weren't even a lot of pedals back in the, the 60s and the 70s, where pedals were just really starting to get popular. But yeah, I love the old amps, the old guitars. I had an old Harmony acoustic. I guess it was a baritone because it was a little bit smaller. That the action on the thing was atrocious, but like you were saying, I guess that's how they came out. And I was told by somebody that they initially sold those guitars and the amps at Sears, like the home store type of thing, and they were just made to be a guitar that you could learn on and pick up, kind of like not as bad, but like the First Stack stuff now. So a lot of these instruments weren't, the super high-end stuff. It was for the common, everyday high school kid who just wanted to learn an instrument,
Yeah, so that's kind of like the romance of it, and I wonder if that nostalgia is what they're thinking is going to be the selling point here. Like maybe some of the people that started on a Harmony or an old beater like that all of a sudden is looking for something different in their life, aside from the Strats and the Les Pauls and everything else that's out there, and say, oh, look at that, here's a Harmony, wow, this thing's a high-end Harmony, and have that brand recognition from back when they were younger and think, oh, I'm going to buy this over this SG, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I want them to do well. I mean, on the other hand, I'm kind of part of me is just salty because I want this to be affordable. Like,
Yeah.
Look what Squire can do now. Why couldn't Harmony be like good at that price point or something like that,
I think it's one of those things that's going to take like a year to see like what the reception is, and then I'm going to steadily watch the prices on it. But I'm so on the fence. Like I know for me, like I know if it was the choice between a Harmony and getting a Cower or Equitz, I'm gonna get a Cower or Equitz just because the people.
If it's over $600, there's just so many good choices out there that are going to be that you can buy used or new and get an easy flip out of it if you don't like it. That's the big difference for me. It's like, okay, if it's $300, hey, I can make it work no matter what. But if it's $600, $800, $1,000, it's like, man, I mean, there's so much stuff out there that I could get and that I know that I could not lose hardly anything if I don't like it and I want to sell it. It's hard, man, unless they just play amazing and they are everywhere so you can try one. I don't see it working at a higher price point.
Well, I guess we wait.
We wait and see.
Yeah.
Wait.
So they can stop sandbagging and put their stuff out. But I guess their site says looking for dealers, so maybe we don't know how far along they are. So
yeah. Well, Ryan had a good point on that those were prototypes and they were very nice in the boutique grade, but that doesn't mean that when they hit production, and who knows where these things are getting produced, is it going to be a factory in China? Is it going to be assembled here in the U.S.? We just don't know. So there's just a lot to be determined. I'm sure that they're doing their market research and that NAMM was like the place to kind of just throw it out there and see how people react to it.
Well, hey, and you got 4 dudes talking about it on a podcast, and another guy talking about it on YouTube. So I guess mission accomplished on the buzz,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
We're not going to release anything about these, so everybody anticipates and assumes, and then we're just going to throw 180 and we're going to crapping these up, and they're going to be $200.
No, I would be all about it if it was $200. I would get one just for fun.
Yeah, there you go. I guess I'll keep buying my old crap then, just old junky ones. The action's too hard. Well, it's because it needs a neck reset because they had truss rods and the truss rods weren't adjustable, so you have to reset them. That's why they're like that. So you shouldn't have bought one then. But anyway, yeah, that's. I'm stoked. I want to see them. I want them to be good, and I want to play one. And I don't want them to be $1,000.
Yeah.
So,
me either. Yeah. Do we have any closing remarks anybody wants to add before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I guess one more thing on the Harmony stuff. You know what I really wish they would bring back? And maybe this is Silvertone, not Harmony. but they're super hard to find. They actually made an amp inside the guitar case.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Those are
Speaker and
cool.
all.
Silvertone, right?
Yeah, that would be cool to see come back.
Just an updated version of that would be so cool. A little champ in a case with a speaker out, or with a cab out too, or in a DI out, maybe a red load box or something.
Oh,
Update it.
Modern spin on it. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty rad, and it especially, you know, we were talking about the being able to surface mount or whatever. I don't want this to be some like boutique item that I would pay a ton of money for, but like if they could do like a kind of an inexpensive circuit board that was compact in a tight spot that didn't weigh a lot, I think it would be pretty amazing what they could pull off today.
Yeah.
Like a what's the name of it? Quilter, like a Quilter amp inside one with a little 8-inch speaker, and then all the normal Quilter outs would be
There you
so
go.
cool.
Yeah.
A Helix in a PRS case.
That would be for Jamie Davis, yeah.
Jamie Davis. We haven't given Jamie a shout out lately.
Yeah, I don't think he likes to be mentioned.
All right, boys.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Clifton World Show. Thanks again, Mike, for coming on the show and just wanting to hang out with us for a little bit tonight. And y'all go check out his stuff. And he's got a really cool website. And so loopholepedals.com. I said it right this time.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Cliff. Honor and privilege to be on here. I really appreciate you guys. And just a side note, the website is being rebuilt right now, so there should be a completely responsive and kind of intuitive layout. Should be done by the end of this month, so everything is just getting easier.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you'll have like the IM chat that we can hit you up with. Unlike Sinusoid, they told me not to do that anymore. No, I'm picking. Andy said we could do it anytime we wanted to. I just had to throw that.
Mike, you gotta come back on when you got an update for us on the originals, man.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
All right. Cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and we'll be back next week for the Clifton Worley Show. And thanks for tuning in, guys.
Later.